Number 10. Woolly mammoths. The giants humans hunted and remembered on the frozen plains of Ice Age Eurasia and North America. Humans lived beside animals so large they must have seemed like moving hills. Woolly mammoths were not distant monsters from a fantasy world. They were real neighbors of prehistoric people, walking through cold grasslands, feeding with curved tusks, carrying thick coats of hair, and leaving tracks across landscapes where small human bands followed herds, for food, bone, ivory, hide, and survival. To encounter a mammoth was to stand before a creature that could feed a group, shelter a camp, inspire art, or kill anyone careless enough to come too close. What makes mammoths so powerful is how closely they were tied to human life. Prehistoric people hunted them, scavenged them, carved them, painted them, and used their remains. Mammoth bones could become building material in treeless Ice Age landscapes. Tusks could become tools, ornaments, figurines, and symbolic objects. Meat could feed families. Fat could mean warmth and survival. Hide could become covering. In some regions, mammoths were not just animals in the background of human existence. They were part of the material world humans depended on, one of the great giants around which survival could be organized. The evidence for human contact is everywhere. Mammoths appear in cave art, carved ivory, portable figures, and archaeological sites where their bones were processed by human hands. The famous images from Ice Age art are not abstract guesses. They are portraits made by people who knew the animal directly. The high shoulder, the sloping back, the long tusks, the heavy body, the shaggy outline. These artists did not need imagination to create monsters. They had seen giants in the snow. But hunting a mammoth was not simple triumph. A full-grown mammoth was dangerous, intelligent, and massive. It could weigh several tons. One wrong movement could crush a hunter. A wounded animal could panic, charge, or scatter a group. Killing one likely required planning, cooperation, landscape knowledge, patience, and risk. Humans may have targeted young, weak, trapped, or isolated individuals, rather than facing healthy adults directly. Every successful hunt was not just a meal. It was a confrontation between fragile human bodies and one of the largest land animals of the Ice Age. The relationship between humans and mammoths was not only practical, it may have been emotional, symbolic, and spiritual. The repeated appearance of mammoths in art suggests they mattered in the human imagination. They may have represented abundance, danger, power, memory, or the world itself. In Ice Age conditions, a mammoth was more than prey. It was a being large enough to shape a landscape and a culture. The people who painted mammoths on cave walls were not merely recording animals. They were marking a relationship with one of the central forces of their world. Then the mammoths disappeared from most of the earth. Their decline was not caused by one simple factor. Climate change transformed the mammoth steppe, replacing open, cold grasslands with forests, wetlands, and new environments. Human hunting added pressure, especially on populations already struggling. Different regions saw different endings. On the mainland, mammoths vanished near the close of the Ice Age. On isolated islands, some survived far longer, with the last known populations on Wrangel Island living until only a few thousand years ago. That means while Egypt was building pyramids, the final mammoths were still alive on a remote Arctic island. That late survival makes their disappearance feel even stranger. Mammoths were not creatures from a world impossibly far away. They overlapped with human memory. Some human communities may have known of living mammoths, while others only knew their bones or stories. As the animals vanished, memories of them could have changed. The giant in the snow became the giant of the ancestors. The tusk found in the ground became proof that huge beings once walked before the present age. Across northern cultures, discoveries of mammoth bones later fed stories about underground beasts, giants, and ancient monsters. Flesh disappeared, but the image remained. That is why woolly mammoths belong among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. They were real giants of the human world, not mythical inventions. Our ancestors hunted them, feared them, depended on them, and preserved their forms in art with a familiarity that still reaches us across tens of thousands of years. The mammoth was one of the great animals that made the Ice Age feel larger than life. and when it vanished, humanity lost more than a source of food and material. It lost a living giant, leaving only bones, ivory, cave paintings, and the uneasy knowledge that humans once walked beside creatures powerful enough to become legends. Number 9. Cave lions. The Ice Age predators painted in darkness in the Ice Age darkness of Europe and Northern Asia. Humans shared the land with a predator larger than any lion alive today. Cave lions moved through open plains, river valleys, frozen grasslands, and the mouths of caves where humans and Neanderthals also sought shelter. They were not imaginary beasts invented by frightened storytellers. They were real hunters with powerful bodies, heavy paws, and the ability to kill large prey in a world already full of danger. To a human band walking at dusk or entering a cave with fire, the knowledge that a cave lion might be nearby was not myth. It was survival. What makes cave lions so haunting is that prehistoric people clearly knew them well. They appear in some of the most famous Ice Age cave art, including images deep inside painted caves where artists captured lions with startling confidence. These are not childish drawings of monsters. They are careful observations, long bodies, alert heads, powerful shoulders, groups moving together, faces turned as if listening in the dark. The people who painted them had seen these animals closely enough to understand their shape and presence. They knew how a lion moved. They knew what it meant when one was watching. Cave lions were apex predators in the mammoth steppe world. They likely hunted horses, reindeer, bison, young mammoths, and other large animals. Humans hunted some of those same animals. That means cave lions were not only threats, they were rivals. They followed herds. They guarded kills. They occupied caves. They competed for carcasses during lean seasons when one dead animal could mean life or starvation. A human group might drive lions away from a kill, or lions might return to claim meat from humans. The boundary between hunter and scavenger was thin, and cave lions lived exactly on that boundary. The cave connection makes the fear even stronger. Caves were not just shelters. They were places of darkness, burial, ritual, art, and danger. A cave could protect a human group from wind and cold, but it could also already belong to something else. Lions, hyenas, bears, and humans all used caves at different times. To enter a cave was to enter a contested world. Firelight could reveal paintings, but it could also reveal bones, claw marks, and the smell of predators. The name, cave lion, may make the animal sound like a creature of underground spaces, but its real power was that it belonged to both worlds, the open steppe and the dark interior, where humans imagined, slept, and feared. Some evidence suggests humans did more than fear cave lions. They may have used lion bones, teeth, claws, and images in symbolic ways. A lion was not just meat or danger, it was power made visible. Its claws, hide, and image could carry meanings we cannot fully recover. In Ice Age art, lions are often shown without manes, moving with a ghostly, silent intensity. They do not look like ordinary prey. They look like beings that demanded respect. When humans painted lions deep underground, perhaps they were not simply recording animals. Perhaps they were entering a relationship with fear itself. The extinction of cave lions came near the end of the Ice Age. As climates changed, prey communities shifted, and human pressure spread across their range. Their world of cold open grasslands fragmented, large herbivores declined or moved. Human hunters became more widespread and efficient. Like many Ice Age predators, cave lions may have faced a collapse of the ecosystem that supported them. A predator at the top of the food chain can seem invincible, but it depends on everything below it. When the herds disappear, the hunters disappear too. What remains is bone and image, skulls, teeth, skeletons, frozen remains, and cave paintings let us reconstruct an animal that once carried real terror into human life. But the human memory of cave lions may also have survived in less direct ways. Later lion myths, monster stories, and heroic tales of humans facing great cats belong to a much younger world. Yet they echo an ancient truth. For most of our past, large predators were not symbols. They were neighbors. They shaped where people walked, when they traveled, how they used fire, and what children were taught to fear. That is why cave lions belong among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. They were the predators painted in darkness, the silent rivals of Ice Age hunters, the owners of caves before humans entered with torches and pigments. Our ancestors did not imagine lions as powerful because of myth. They mythologized power because lions were real. Somewhere in a frozen valley, at the edge of a fire's reach, a human once heard movement in the dark and knew that the ancient world still had teeth. Number 8. Giant ground sloths. The beasts of the Americas. In the Ice Age Americas, humans walked into landscapes filled with animals that seem almost impossible today. Among the strangest were the giant ground sloths, heavy-bodied mammals with long claws and bodies large enough to make modern sloths look like distant shadows of a lost age. Some species stood taller than a person when rising on their hind legs. Others were built like living walls of muscle, fur, and bone. To early humans moving through the Americas, these creatures were not fossils or skeletons. They were real animals crossing plains and forests, leaving tracks in the same ground humans walked. What makes giant ground sloths so haunting is how unlike modern expectations they were. Today, sloths are imagined as small, slow animals hanging quietly from trees. Ice Age ground sloths were something else entirely. They lived on land, browsed vegetation, used their enormous claws to pull down branches or defend themselves, and occupied ecosystems from North America to South America. Some were the size of large bears, others were far larger. Their skulls, claws, and limb bones suggest animals that could not be ignored. If one stood upright before a human group, it would have looked less like prey and more like a creature from a monster story. Humans almost certainly encountered them. Archaeological evidence in the Americas shows overlap between people and several megafauna species, including ground sloths. At some sites, researchers have found clues of human interaction with sloth remains. Even more powerful are the ancient footprints preserved in places like White Sands, where human tracks and giant ground sloth tracks appear in the same Ice Age landscape. These traces do not give us a full story, but they place human bodies and sloth bodies in the same world. The ground itself records that they shared space. Imagine what that encounter could mean. A giant ground sloth was not an easy animal to hunt. Its claws could tear, its weight could crush, and its size alone made it dangerous. Humans may have followed them, avoided them, scavenged their remains, or hunted vulnerable individuals when conditions allowed. The idea that early people casually dominated such animals is too simple. Humans survived by caution as much as courage. The footprints make the relationship feel especially alive. Tracks are not like bones. They preserve movement. They show that an animal stepped, turned, shifted weight, or reacted. When human footprints appear near the tracks of megafauna, the ancient world becomes immediate. You can imagine people watching from a distance, testing danger, following a trail, or crossing paths by accident. A skeleton tells us that a creature existed. A footprint tells us that it was there, moving in a moment that once had breath and tension. Ground sloths may also have influenced human imagination. A huge shaggy animal with long arms and claws, rising upright near a tree line, would be unforgettable. In later times, indigenous traditions across the Americas include many beings that combine animal power and giant size. It would be careless to claim every monster story comes from ground sloths. But it is easy to understand how encounters with such animals could become ancestral warnings. A creature does not need to breathe fire to become mythic. It only needs to be large enough to frighten the people who saw it. Their extinction remains part of the broader mystery of the American megafauna collapse. Climate change transformed habitats, human hunting added pressure. Small population changes could have mattered. The exact balance varied by region, but the pattern is clear. After humans spread through the Americas, many of the largest animals disappeared. Giant ground sloths, which had survived for millions of years, were among them. Their ending was not one dramatic final battle. It was a slow loss of landscapes and populations until no living sloth giant remained. That is why giant ground sloths belong among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. They were real giants of the Americas, strange enough to look unreal, dangerous enough to demand respect, and close enough to humans that their tracks still cross the same ancient ground. Our ancestors did not inherit an empty continent. They entered a world where enormous clawed herbivores moved through forests and open plains, where a human could look up and see a beast taller than memory should allow. The giant ground sloths vanished, but their bones and footprints still say the same thing. Before the Americas became the world we know, humans walked beside monsters made of flesh. Number 7. Short-faced bears. The North American monster bear in Ice Age North America. Humans entered a continent where the largest predator on the horizon may not have been a cat, a wolf, or a human rival, but a bear built like a nightmare. The short-faced bear was one of the most imposing carnivores of the Pleistocene, a towering animal with long limbs, a powerful body, and a skull that looked different from the bears people know today. Standing upright, it could appear enormous, high enough to make a human seem fragile and exposed. To the first people moving through North America, this was not a creature from legend. It was part of the landscape. What makes the short-faced bear so terrifying is the scale of the encounter. Early humans crossing into the Americas were entering a world already ruled by megafauna. Mammoths, horses, camels, bison, ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and giant bears all occupied the same ecological stage. Humans had tools, fire, memory, and cooperation, but they were still physically small. A short-faced bear did not need to understand human fear to create it. Its size alone would have changed how people moved, where they camped, and how cautiously they approached carcasses. The short-faced bear has often been imagined as a high-speed predator of open country, though scientists continue to debate exactly how it lived. It may have hunted large animals directly, scavenged kills, or used its size to dominate carcasses from other predators. Any of those possibilities would have mattered to humans. In Ice Age ecosystems, a carcass was wealth. Meat, fat, hide, bone, and marrow could keep a group alive. But a dead animal also attracted danger. Humans arriving at a mammoth or bison carcass may not have been alone. Wolves might circle, cats might return, and from the distance, a massive bear could appear, turning opportunity into threat. This is where the short-faced bear becomes more than an animal. It becomes a force in the human imagination. Imagine seeing its tracks in mud near a water source, each print a warning that something huge had passed recently. Imagine finding a carcass torn open and wondering whether the owner of the kill was still nearby. Imagine hearing movement outside a camp at night and knowing that even fire might not feel like enough. The Ice Age was not a world where humans simply conquered nature. It was a world where every meal could have a second claimant. The bear's body made it feel almost unnatural. Compared with many modern bears, the short-faced bear had longer limbs and a different profile, giving it a more open country, rangy appearance. Its face looked shortened, its jaws strong, its posture imposing. Fossils cannot tell us how it sounded, how it moved in the half-light, or how often humans saw it. But they tell us enough. This was a predator, or dominant scavenger, large enough to make human caution a survival strategy. Could it have entered myth? Direct stories from the first Americans are lost beyond recovery, but the possibility is powerful. Many indigenous traditions across North America include powerful bear beings, giant animals, dangerous spirits, and creatures of overwhelming strength. It would be careless to claim that those stories are direct memories of short-faced bears. Myths are living traditions, not fossil labels, but humans who shared a continent with such an animal would almost certainly remember it in story, warning, and teaching. A bear that could tower over people does not disappear from fear simply because its species later goes extinct. The extinction of the short-faced bear came near the end of the Ice Age, when North America's megafauna world collapsed. Climate change shifted habitats and prey populations. Human hunting and ecological disruption added pressure across the continent. As large herbivores declined, the predators and scavengers tied to them also faced collapse. A giant bear built for a world of giants had no easy place in the smaller, warmer world that followed. Like so many Ice Age creatures, it vanished as the ecosystem that made it possible came apart. That is why short-faced bears belong among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. They were not symbolic monsters invented after the fact. They were real animals moving through the same continent early humans were learning to survive. Somewhere in the Ice Age Americas, a human group may have watched one rise on the horizon, smelled it near a kill, or found its tracks crossing the path ahead. The short-faced bear reminds us that before humans became the dominant predator on the landscape, there were other powers walking the earth, larger, stronger, and old enough to make fear feel like memory. Number 6. Dire wolves. The pack hunters beside early Americans in Ice Age North America, the night did not belong to humans. It belonged to eyes moving in groups, paws crossing frozen ground, and teeth waiting near the edge of firelight. Dire wolves were among the most famous predators of the Pleistocene, larger and heavier than most modern wolves, with powerful jaws built for killing and feeding in a world of giant prey. They moved through landscapes filled with mammoths, bison, horses, camels, ground sloths, and other animals that no longer exist. When the first humans entered those same landscapes, they were not walking into empty wilderness. They were walking into territory already watched by packs. What makes dire wolves so haunting is that they were not solitary monsters. A single large predator is frightening, but a pack is something else. A pack thinks in movement. It surrounds, tests, follows, waits, and learns weakness. Early humans also survived through cooperation, planning, communication, and group strategy. In that sense, dire wolves were not just threats, they were mirrors. Two social predators moved through the same Ice Age world, both following herds, both reading tracks, both depending on teamwork, both gathering around carcasses that could mean survival. The famous tar pits of La Brea preserved thousands of dire wolf remains, showing just how common and successful they once were in parts of North America. These animals were drawn to trapped prey, just as other predators and scavengers were. The tar pits became death traps for a whole ecosystem: mammoths, horses, bison, saber-toothed cats, birds, and wolves. The number of dire wolf bones found there suggests an animal deeply tied to the predator world of the late Ice Age. They were not rare shadows at the edge of the story. They were everywhere the food chain allowed them to be. For humans, encounters with dire wolves may have ranged from distant observation to direct danger. A group of people butchering a kill could attract wolves by smell. A wounded animal followed by humans might also be followed by a pack. A camp with scraps could become a target. Dire wolves may have competed with humans for meat, but they may also have taught humans something about the land. Wolves are expert readers of weakness in herds. Human hunters watching wolves from a distance could learn where prey moved, which animals were vulnerable, and when danger was near, rivalry and learning may have existed side by side. The relationship becomes even more interesting because humans were already forming deep bonds with canids elsewhere in the world. The domestication of dogs likely began before or around the broad Ice Age period, though its timing and path remain debated. Dire wolves themselves were not the ancestors of domestic dogs, but their presence in North America created a strange contrast. Humans may have entered the continent with early dogs or dog-like companions while facing wild packs of dire wolves in the same ecosystems. Imagine that moment, one kind of canid beside the fire, another watching from the dark. This difference would have mattered emotionally. A dog could become partner, alarm, tracker, warmth, and companion. A dire wolf remained the older fear, the pack outside the circle. To prehistoric people, the distinction between helpful canid and dangerous canid may have been one of the most important boundaries in daily life. The wolf was not simply an animal. It was a test of whether the night belonged to humans, to allies, or to the wild. Dire wolves disappeared near the end of the Ice Age, along with many of the large animals that supported their world. As megafauna declined, the ecosystems that fed large pack predators changed. Climate shifted, prey populations collapsed. Human hunting pressure and ecological disruption may have added stress. Dire wolves were specialized for a Pleistocene world of large prey and fierce competition. When that world ended, they had no easy future. Grey wolves survived. Coyotes survived. Dogs stayed with humans. Dire wolves vanished. That is why dire wolves belong among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. They were not fantasy beasts. They were real pack hunters moving through the same continent where early Americans built fires, followed herds, and learned how to survive. Somewhere in the Ice Age night, a human group may have heard a pack calling across the plain, and understood that they were not the only intelligent hunters in the dark. The dire wolf reminds us that prehistory was not only a battle between humans and monsters. It was a world of rival minds, rival packs, and rival claims to the same meat, the same trails, and the same dangerous land. Number 5. Cave hyenas. The bone. Crushing rivals of Ice Age humans, in the Ice Age caves of Europe, humans were not always the first to claim shelter. Long before hunters entered with fire, tools, and animal skins, the cave may already have belonged to another predator. Cave hyenas lived across prehistoric Europe and Western Asia, powerful relatives of modern spotted hyenas, adapted to cold landscapes and capable of crushing bones with terrifying force. They were not background scavengers waiting for leftovers. They were dangerous social predators, den makers, carcass thieves, and rivals for the same protected spaces that humans and Neanderthals needed to survive. What makes cave hyenas so unsettling is that they occupied the threshold between animal danger and human survival. Cave was valuable. It offered shelter from wind, cold, rain, snow, predators, and darkness. It could become a place to sleep, butcher animals, make tools, paint walls, bury the dead, or survive winter. But caves were also prime territory for hyenas. They dragged carcasses inside, raised young there, fed there, and left behind floors covered in chewed bone. When humans found a cave, they were not simply discovering an empty house of stone, they were entering contested ground. The evidence is written in teeth marks. Cave hyena dens are often filled with broken bones of horses, bison, reindeer, woolly rhinoceroses, mammoths, and other Ice Age animals. Their jaws were strong enough to crack bones that many predators left behind, giving them access to marrow and nutrients locked inside. That made them efficient. It also made them terrifying competitors. Humans wanted meat and marrow too. Neanderthals wanted caves too. In some regions, the struggle for shelter and carcasses may have been constant. A human group might avoid a cave that smelled of hyena. They might drive hyenas away with fire, noise, numbers, and weapons. Hyenas might return after humans left, chewing bones and scattering remains. The same cave could preserve alternating traces, humans using the space, hyenas taking it back, humans returning later. To the people living then, it meant something simpler. The dark had owners, and not all of them were human. Cave hyenas also competed with humans for carcasses outside caves. In an Ice Age landscape, a dead animal was never just food. It was a battlefield of scent and timing. Lions, wolves, bears, hyenas, and humans could all be drawn to the same kill. A group of hunters butchering a horse or bison had to work quickly. The smell of blood traveled. A hyena clan could arrive with jaws strong enough to break what humans could not carry. Humans had intelligence and fire, but hyenas had numbers, teeth, and the confidence of predators that had survived in that world long before us. Their connection to Neanderthals makes the story darker. Neanderthals lived in many of the same regions and used many of the same caves. They were strong, skilled, and adapted to Ice Age Europe. But even they had to share the landscape with hyenas. Some ancient human remains show carnivore damage, and hyenas may have scavenged human bodies in certain cases. The idea is uncomfortable, but it reminds us that ancient humans did not always control death. Sometimes the dead entered the food chain like any other animal. Could cave hyenas have entered human memory? They were loud, social, intelligent, bone-crushing, and tied to darkness. Cave filled with their calls would have sounded like a place possessed. Their laughter, like vocalizations and habit of dragging bones into hidden spaces, could easily become fear, warning, and story. We cannot point to one later myth and say it came from cave hyenas. But humans who lived beside them would not have forgotten them. A predator that shares your shelter becomes part of your mental world. Cave hyenas disappeared near the end of the Ice Age as climates shifted. Prey populations changed, and ecosystems transformed. Their cold, adapted world broke apart. Open-steppe habitats shrank. Many large herbivores declined. Humans became more numerous and more effective across Europe. Like other Ice Age carnivores, cave hyenas may have lost both the prey and the space they needed. Their dens emptied, their calls vanished, and the caves they once ruled became silent. That is why cave hyenas belong among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. They were not merely scavengers in the margins of the Ice Age. They were rivals for meat, shelter, darkness, and survival. When humans entered caves, they entered a world already marked by hyena teeth. The cave hyena reminds us that before humans made caves into sacred galleries, shelters, and graves, other predators had already made them into dens, and our ancestors had to take the darkness back. Number 4. Megalania. The giant monitor lizard of ancient Australia. In ancient Australia, the first humans entered a continent unlike any other on Earth. It was a land of giant marsupials, enormous birds, strange reptiles, dangerous deserts, dense forests, and animals found nowhere else. Among the most disturbing creatures that may have shared this world was Megalania, the giant monitor lizard. Related to modern goannas and Komodo dragons, Megalania was not a dragon in the fantasy sense. It was something more unsettling, a real reptilian predator, large enough to make the Australian landscape feel prehistoric in the most literal way. The exact size of Megalania is still debated, but even conservative estimates describe an animal far larger than any living monitor lizard. It may have reached several meters in length, with a heavy body, sharp claws, and jaws capable of a devastating bite. Modern monitor lizards are already intelligent, fast, muscular, and dangerous for their size. Scale that body upward into Ice Age Australia, and the result is an animal that would have been impossible for humans to ignore. To see one moving through dry scrub or forest edge would not feel like seeing a lizard. It would feel like seeing an ancient monster alive on the ground. What makes Megalania especially haunting is the possibility of overlap with humans. The first Aboriginal Australians arrived tens of thousands of years ago, entering a continent where megafauna still survived. Megalania's exact extinction date remains uncertain, and not every researcher agrees on how long it lasted. But the possibility that early humans encountered it is strong enough to make the question unavoidable. If people shared the land with giant kangaroos, diprotodons, marsupial lions, and enormous birds, then the giant monitor may also have been part of that dangerous first world. A predator like Megalania would have changed how people moved. It may have hunted or scavenged large animals, waited near water sources, followed scent, or ambushed prey from cover. Monitor lizards use smell with extraordinary sensitivity, and modern relatives can track carrion over long distances. Imagine a human camp after a hunt, meat being cut, blood on the ground, scraps nearby, and somewhere beyond the firelight, a giant reptile catching the scent. The danger would not need to be constant. One encounter would be enough. There is also the question of venom. Modern monitor lizards, including Komodo dragons, have complex bites that can cause severe injury, and some research has discussed venom-related traits in monitor lizards. Whether Megalania used venom in the same way remains debated, but the idea adds to the fear. A massive reptile with claws, teeth, strength, and a dangerous bite would occupy a very different place in human memory than ordinary predators. It would be a creature of caution, a being associated with waterholes, carcasses, heat, and sudden violence. Could Megalania have entered Australian oral tradition? That question must be handled carefully. Aboriginal Australian cultures are living, complex, and diverse, and their stories should not be reduced to simple fossil memories. But many traditions include powerful reptilian beings, giant goannas, ancestral creatures, and landscape-shaping animals. It would be careless to claim that any one story is definitely Megalania, yet it is also reasonable to wonder whether encounters with very large extinct reptiles or later discoveries of their bones may have contributed to some memories of enormous lizard-like beings. When a real animal is large enough to terrify generations, the line between creature and ancestral warning can become thin. Megalania's disappearance belongs to the larger collapse of Australian megafauna. Climate shifts, changing fire regimes, ecosystem pressure, and human activity may all have played roles. Australia's giant animals had survived for immense spans of time, but after humans arrived, many of them vanished. The exact causes remain debated, but the pattern is clear. a world of large, strange creatures ended, and the Australia that remained was smaller, quieter, and missing many of its most dramatic forms. That is why Megalania belongs among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. It was not a dinosaur misplaced in time, and it was not a legend invented from nothing. It was a giant monitor lizard from a continent already famous for evolutionary strangeness, a predator or scavenger that may have moved through the same landscapes early Australians were learning to survive. Somewhere in the deep past, a human group may have seen a huge reptile crossing dry earth, emerging near water, or feeding at the edge of a carcass. And for one moment, the ancient world would have looked exactly like myth, a dragon, not from imagination but from Australia itself. Number 3. Haast's eagle. The giant bird that hunted like a myth in New Zealand, before the forests grew quiet, and before the largest birds vanished. The sky belonged to a predator so powerful it sounds almost invented. Haast's eagle was the largest eagle known to science, with talons like killing hooks, wings built for fast strikes through forest openings, and a body strong enough to attack prey far larger than itself. It was not a dragon, not a thunderbird in a distant legend, and not a monster exaggerated by fear. It was a real bird of prey that lived in the same island world humans entered only a few centuries ago. What made Haast's eagle terrifying was its prey. New Zealand was once home to moa, huge flightless birds that filled ecological roles normally held by large grazing animals elsewhere. Some moa stood taller than humans. They had no need to fly because, for millions of years, New Zealand had no land mammals hunting them. Instead, danger came from above. Haast's eagle evolved into a specialist predator of giant birds, descending with immense force, striking with talons, and killing animals that could weigh many times more than the eagle itself. It was a sky predator built for an island of giants. Then humans arrived. Polynesian settlers, the ancestors of the Maori, reached New Zealand and entered a world unlike any other. There were no mammoths, no lions, no wolves, no bears. But there were moa moving through forests and shrublands, and above them, an eagle powerful enough to hunt like a myth. Unlike many Ice Age creatures that disappeared thousands of years before writing, Haast's eagle survived into the human period. That means people may not only have seen its bones or imagined its shape, they may have watched it fly. Imagine what that first encounter might have been like. A human group moving through unfamiliar forest hears a sudden rush of air. A shadow crosses the ground. A bird larger than any eagle they know drops from above, talons extended toward a moa, or perhaps toward anything that looks vulnerable. Even if Haast's eagle did not regularly hunt humans, its size and attack method would have made it impossible to ignore. A predator that kills from the sky creates a different kind of fear. You can watch the forest line for cats, you can listen for wolves, but a giant eagle turns the open sky into danger. This is why Haast's eagle is often discussed alongside Maori traditions of giant birds, especially the creature sometimes called pukai or hokioi in later interpretations. These traditions should be treated carefully, because oral stories are not simple fossil labels, and living cultures are not scientific footnotes. But the overlap is powerful. New Zealand really did have an enormous eagle. Maori ancestors really did live in the same broad period as that bird. And stories of dangerous giant birds in New Zealand are far easier to understand when we know that one actually existed. The extinction of Haast's eagle was tied to the disappearance of the moa. Humans hunted moa heavily, and within a relatively short time, the great flightless birds vanished. Once the moa were gone, the eagle lost the prey base that had shaped its evolution. A predator can be terrifying, and still fragile if it depends on one kind of world. Haast's eagle was a ruler of a system built around giant birds. When humans changed that system, the eagle had nowhere to go. It disappeared soon after its prey. That makes the story darker than a simple monster tale. Humans may have feared Haast's eagle, but we also helped destroy the world that sustained it. By hunting moa and transforming landscapes, people unintentionally removed the foundation beneath the sky predator. The eagle did not vanish because it was weak. It vanished because the island changed too quickly. A bird that had dominated for ages was undone by a new species that arrived with fire, tools, and hunger. What remains is a creature that feels almost too recent to be called prehistoric. Haast's eagle may have disappeared around the time medieval kingdoms existed elsewhere in the world. While castles rose in Europe and empires traded across Asia, a giant eagle still haunted the forests and skies of New Zealand. Its extinction belongs not to remote deep time, but to the human story. That is why Haast's eagle belongs among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. It was a real sky monster, a predator of giant birds, and possibly a living source behind memories of enormous dangerous birds in Maori tradition. It reminds us that not all prehistoric beasts vanished before humans arrived. Some survived long enough to look down on us from above, and in New Zealand, for a brief and frightening chapter, humans walked beneath a sky where the largest eagle on Earth still hunted. Number 2. Moa. The giant birds humans drove into legend before New Zealand became the land people know today. It was ruled by birds, with no native land mammals hunting them. Birds filled roles that elsewhere belonged to deer, antelope, and giant herbivores. The greatest of them were the moa, huge flightless birds that moved through forests, shrublands, and open country like living relics from another world. Some species stood taller than a person, with long necks, heavy bodies, powerful legs, and no wings at all. To the first Polynesian settlers who reached New Zealand, these were not ancient bones or museum skeletons. They were living giants. What makes moa so haunting is how recent they were. They did not vanish in remote Ice Age darkness long before humans appeared. They survived until people reached New Zealand, and then they disappeared within a few centuries. That means humans did not merely discover the remains of moa. They encountered them, hunted them, ate them, used their bones, carried their eggs, and reshaped the island world around them. In the story of prehistoric creatures humans actually met, moa are not a possibility on the edge of evidence. They are one of the clearest cases. The scale of the encounter must have been astonishing. Imagine arriving on an island where the largest land animals are birds taller than humans. There are no lions, no wolves, no bears, no mammoths. Instead, the forests hold giant feathered herbivores that had evolved without experience of human hunters. Some moa may have been easier to approach than animals from continents filled with predators. To people skilled in hunting and survival, this would have looked like abundance. Meat, eggs, feathers, bones, and raw materials stood before them in a land newly entered. But abundance can vanish quickly. Archaeological evidence shows moa were hunted heavily. Their bones appear in early settlement sites. Sometimes in large quantities, eggs were used. Habitats were burned or changed. Moa populations, which had evolved in isolation and likely reproduced slowly, could not withstand sustained human pressure combined with landscape transformation. A world that had taken millions of years to form was broken in a short human time. The giant birds disappeared so completely that later generations knew them more through memory, bones, and story than through living encounters. This is where moa begin to turn into legend. Creature that once walked beside humans becomes, after extinction, something almost unreal. People find enormous bones in the ground. Elders tell of birds larger than a person. Old hunting places become part of ancestral memory. The living animal becomes the remembered giant. The boundary between natural history and myth grows thin, not because anyone invented the moa, but because extinction turns reality into something the present can no longer verify with its eyes. The disappearance of the moa also changed New Zealand's entire ecosystem. These birds were not isolated monsters wandering through a static landscape. They were major browsers and grazers, shaping vegetation and supporting predators like Haast's eagle. When moa vanished, the largest eagle on Earth lost the prey base that sustained it. Forests and shrublands changed, human settlement expanded, fire altered habitats. One extinction pulled on many threads. The loss of the moa was not just the death of birds. It was the collapse of an island order. That makes the human role difficult to face. The first settlers of New Zealand were not uniquely destructive compared with other humans. They were doing what human communities have often done when entering new ecosystems: hunting, burning, adapting, surviving, expanding. But islands are fragile. Animals that evolved without mammalian predators often have no defense against people, dogs, fire, and rapid harvest. The moa did not have time to become wary of humanity. By the time the danger was understood, it may already have been too late. That is why moa belong among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. They were not mythical birds invented from fear or imagination. They were real giants of New Zealand, living close enough to history that their extinction feels almost recent. Humans saw them. Humans hunted them. Then they were gone. And when the last moa died, the island did not simply lose an animal. It lost a whole shape of life, forests with giant birds moving through them, skies ruled by an eagle built to kill them, and a human memory that still has to carry the weight of what vanished. Number 1. Saber-toothed cats. The fanged predators humans may have feared. Few prehistoric animals look more like a nightmare than a saber-toothed cat. The skull alone feels unreal. Deep jaws, powerful neck muscles, heavy forelimbs, and upper canine teeth. So long, they seem almost impossible for a real predator. But saber-toothed cats were not fantasy creatures. In the Americas, especially during the Ice Age, species like Smilodon lived in the same broad world early humans entered. They were flesh, bone, hunger, and muscle, to the first people moving across landscapes filled with mammoths, bison, camels, horses, and giant ground sloths. The saber-toothed cat was not a symbol. It was danger with a face. What makes these cats so terrifying is that they were different from modern lions and tigers. Smilodon was not built for long chases across open ground. It was built for power. Its body was muscular, compact, and heavy, with strong forelimbs that may have helped it wrestle large prey to the ground. The famous teeth were not simple stabbing tools for every bite. They were specialized weapons, likely used with precision after prey had been controlled. This was a predator designed around close violence. If a human ever came within range, speed would not be the only problem. Strength would be. Humans and saber-toothed cats almost certainly overlapped in the Americas. The timing places early human populations inside ecosystems where Smilodon still hunted. Both species were interested in the same animals, though in different ways. Humans wanted meat, hide, bone, and fat. Saber-toothed cats wanted prey. A kill on the landscape could draw both. Humans may have found carcasses left by cats. Cats may have approached carcasses humans were butchering. In a world without fences or safe boundaries, every dead animal could become a meeting point between intelligence and teeth. The La Brea tar pits show how common and powerful these predators once were. Many Smilodon remains were preserved there, drawn by trapped animals and the chance of food. The same tar that caught herbivores caught the predators that came after them. This gives us a window into an Ice Age food web crowded with danger. Dire wolves, saber-toothed cats, giant herbivores, birds, and scavengers, all pulled toward the same sources of meat. Humans entering such a world had to learn quickly that survival depended on reading not only prey, but predators. Could saber-toothed cats have shaped human fear? Almost certainly. Predator does not need to attack often to change behavior. The possibility is enough. People would avoid certain places, protect children, keep fires alive, travel in groups, listen for movement, and watch the edge of darkness. Large cats are ambush predators, and ambush predators create a special kind of fear because the attack comes from not knowing. The grass moves, the shadow shifts, the silence becomes suspicious. Human intelligence evolved in worlds where being watched mattered. The image of the fanged cat may also explain why saber-toothed predators feel so mythic today. Their teeth look exaggerated, almost symbolic, as if nature itself designed a monster. Ancient humans who saw them alive would not need to invent a beast with killing fangs. They had one in front of them. Whether or not any specific myth preserves a memory of Smilodon, the emotional imprint of living beside such predators must have been deep. In a world where stories taught survival, the warning would be simple. There are cats in the grass, and some of them are larger than fear. Their extinction came near the end of the Ice Age, as the megafauna world collapsed. The large herbivores that sustained many predators declined under climate change, habitat shifts, and human pressure. As prey vanished, specialized hunters suffered. Smilodon had survived for a long time in a world of giant animals. But when that world shrank, its body became a weapon made for a past that no longer existed. The saber teeth that made it iconic could not save it from ecological collapse. That is why saber-toothed cats belong at number 1 among the prehistoric creatures humans may have actually encountered. They represent the deepest fear of the ancient landscape. Not the giant you hunt, but the predator that hunts from hiding. They were real enough to walk the same continents as humans, powerful enough to compete for meat, and strange enough that their skulls still look like myth after thousands of years. Before humans became the dominant force on Earth, we lived in a world where something with curved blades for teeth could be watching from the grass, and for our ancestors, that was not legend. That was the night.